Hi everyone, this week we're going to bring you an ultimate buyer's guide for the Land Rover Discovery 3 and also for the Discovery 4. They share a platform very similar as we've seen in the videos in the past. We've had this one, it's the 2006 HSE on a 2.7 V6 diesel. We've had this now for about 2.5 years. In the UK, typically we really only see the diesel engines because of the fuel economy difference compared to the 4.4 V8, which I think has a claimed 18 miles to the gallon, but I'm pretty sure most people will never see 18 miles per gallon on that. It's going to be below 15. Whereas on the diesel, you will get up into the 27 if you have mud terrains like we have, if you drive it carefully. If you have normal tyres, you can even push that well into the 30s, 33, 34. The base model starts off with the S. With the S you get the interior with the fabric trim, you get the small display screen. As you move up then to the SE, you get the larger screen, and you also actually get the leather seats and already get quite a lot of comforts in there. And as you move then to the XS basically has everything in it. You typically get the Cardan 7 stereo system in there. And then the HSE adds on top of that the panoramic sunroof. But watch out, because although I said they have these different features levels, and if you look them up in the books you'll see what you get, what you don't understand is that often they're spec'd up. Originally they were purchased, example on this one here, it had the rear climate control added. It also had the rear differential locker, which is very important if you're looking out for one of those. So make sure you actually look up the VIN number, and you can actually go on to the website for the Vindicator and actually tell you each feature and function that's on your specific vehicle you're looking at. The other part of running costs is the vehicle tax. This one being a 2006 unfortunately is the most expensive, so you're going to be paying the £600 a year for that at the moment. If you want to actually reduce that down, you've got two options. First of all, you can actually get a vehicle which is the pre-2006, meaning that 2004 to 2006, because then it's going to fall in the old bracket, which I think is around about the £325 now. Or alternatively, you have to jump to a new vehicle. So in 2014, when the Discovery 4, when it had the 8-speed gearbox as well, that also has the lower tax bracket on it. A final thought, especially if you've seen our friend Brian, he's got one of the commercials, so that actually has a lower level as well because it's classed as a van. As I said, this is the 2.7 V6. It comes as standard originally with 190 brake horsepower. This same engine, when they brought the D4 out, was fitted to it as well. They did actually boost it up to 211, but shortly after that, I think in around about 2000 and late 10, early 11, is when they actually changed that to the 3-litre engine. I'm sure here there's lots of people going to be asking, well, what about reliability? And this is one of the big debates that everyone has. Is it more reliable, the Discovery 3 or the Discovery 4 with the challenge on the crank? I'd also add to this as well, it's a known problem for pretty much all of the Discoveries, from the 3, 4 and the 5, to potentially have a cracked crank. Touch wood, we've been obviously had no problems at all with ours. I do know a few friends who have had problems both with the 3s and the 4s. It does seem that the 4s are potentially slightly more liable to go, possibly because of that higher power output, and those later SDV6s with the 253 brake horsepower standard obviously going to put a little bit more pressure on that crank. But with those D4s you also get a few extra luxuries in there, not to mention you can get that 8-speed gearbox with the paddle shifts on the steering wheels, and it really is very plushy in comparison. So let's actually start now thinking about what else can go wrong with your vehicle and what you should be looking at when you're going to purchase. If you are buying a D3, first point is, in fact even the D4 as well, make sure it's had a good service history and make sure you know when the belts have been changed. The belts in here aren't a quick job. It's typically actually going to cost you around about £1,000 to have the timing belts changed, and obviously if they do go, then it's obviously an engine catastrophe. Next thing as well with the D3, I think nearly all of these have been probably fixed by now, but the oil pump. on the earlier models, I think that's sort of 2004 through to about 2007, there was a known problem with the oil pump, and typically what people do is when they had the belts changed, so again that's usually in that sort of 90 to 100,000 miles, they will also change the oil pump over to the new design, and there's no problem with it from there on. Other thing is, this vehicle is obviously a very heavy vehicle. In fact, this one with all the extra modifications on it is probably going to come into around about 3 tons. So what you find is, yes, wheel bearings are going to go. They're not going to be very expensive. In fact, they are fairly easy to do even yourself, especially on the front. Also, the next piece, which is a bit more challenging, is actually the suspension arms. Typically, they're going to go around about, say, every 60,000 miles, where you both have the top and the bottom. The bushes are actually integral within the arms, so that means the whole arm actually has to come off. Again, the parts aren't that expensive. It can be a challenge to get them off, especially if you have a lot of corrosions on the bolts, which means you've then got to actually get the angle grinder on there and cut those bolts off. They come with both a automatic or a manual gearbox. In fact, both the gearboxes are fine. In fact, I think if anything, this is one of the stronger points of the vehicles. I personally prefer the automatic. It just gives it a bit more comfort. It's actually easier to drive off-road. I know again some of my friends, they have the manual and they're also very happy with that. Yes, you might have to replace the clutch on those, but again, that's not such a big problem on it. What can be a problem though is suspension. You can see here we've got it jacked up because majority of the vehicles, apart from the very low end models, all the top end ones come with the air suspension. Air suspension is great when it works, especially if you have things like the X-Lifter where we can adjust the height, etc. But a few problems can occur. First one is underneath where we've got the compressor. That compressor can go if it's run too heavily, if it gets a lot of mud caked up underneath there, etc. And the other thing is you will see many vehicles that might be sort of sagging down just after a day or two's use, where there's obviously some sort of leak. That leak might be something that's coming from the actual airbags themselves, or it could be actually from the distribution block where it's actually sending the air to each of the different wheels. Now, again, it's not a massive problem. You can get that fixed, but you've got to actually sort of find where the fault is, and that can be the biggest challenge for it. So if you're going out to buy one, ideal thing is to actually see if you can check to see that suspension raises fully up, drops fully down, and there shouldn't be any strange noises, and it should go up and down fairly quickly without it having any bings or bongs on the control panel. Let's actually pop the bonnet and have a quick look at the engine inside. Got the hydraulic struts on it. You can see as well I've actually got the aftermarket grille from Powerful UK, makes it look a little bit newer, etc. But inside, what else can go wrong with it? Well, I know there's a few people that have had problems with the hose going to the turbo as well. That can leak, but again, that's not an expensive piece if you know where it is. I know a few other people have had problems with the turbo actuator as well. Again, that seems to be something that comes from needing to actually make sure the actual vehicle is got a good clean out of those pieces as well. In terms of like battery and all those pieces, no problem with that at all. Over this side, if you're not familiar with it as well, the higher models have a diesel heater. So in the winter, when the temperature's below 5 degrees centigrade, when you switch on the vehicle, it's actually going to do this preheat. That means it'll help heat up the engine faster, where in theory it's meant to actually give you better economy from it, and also heat up your inside of the cabin with it as well. If this hasn't been used for a long time, sometimes it can actually lock out and get gunked up. Also, you'll always see lots of posts on the forums during the first weeks of winter. You get lots of people saying, my car's on fire, you see the smoke coming out. In fact, I think, Harvey, we've got a video for that as well, which can show you with some of that smoke coming out. It's perfectly fine, no problem at all. The rest of the things under the bonnet, most of it I'd say is pretty much the same as what you're looking for any other vehicle. Make sure your oil is obviously good and clean. You can see on this one, hasn't been changed for a while. It's actually probably due in I think September, October time, its next service, but again it's looking pretty good. Make sure as well that you've got no mess in the filler cap either for the oil. So again, you see, nice and clean in there as well. If you get any gunk in there, that's not good on these engines. Battery and electrics here, also some of the pieces on the other side. You don't want to get those wet. Make sure that if the vehicle has been off-road, you just check that it looks like it's sort of clean in there as well, that you haven't got lots of wet in there, because once you get wet in there, that can be a real problem. And then, as I said, electrics can be a challenging issue. Make sure all the electrics work. Hopefully, obviously, you get the 2 keys with it. One of the common other problems are you might find that for some odd reason you can't unlock the vehicle. That's a common fault. In fact, we had that even with this vehicle as well, because inside here, after you come around here, underneath here, you'll actually find a wiring loom, and that actually has a known problem that it has like an end piece that actually is meant to connect 2 wires together, and that often can actually get some corrosion in it, which then stops your remote working. So if the remote doesn't work, that's something to actually check and ask the people whether it has any problems with it there or not. In terms of corrosion, they're actually not bad, most of the Discoveries. They don't really see a huge amount of issues on the body themselves. We've got the rock sliders, so you can't really sort of see down here. One of the problems that some people have is you might get some issues around the sill, especially if it's had had the running boards fitted, and they can actually cover it over. Next up as well, in terms of corrosion, just check underneath, make sure that the actual chassis is in good condition. Again, this one, if you have a look underneath, Harvey, you can see it looks pretty reasonable because we've had it with that Lanagard sprayed all over it. But again, just make sure you haven't got any really excessive corrosion there. Talking of things about checking to make sure it works, make sure you check the handbrake. If that handbrake doesn't pull on smoothly and quietly, I'll show you how it works in a minute. If it makes a nasty squealing sound, or if it's been cut off or doesn't do anything, that means it's going to cost you about £1,000 to get that fixed. It's a module which is a real pain to actually get to, that's underneath, and that module, pretty much the whole thing has to be replaced. It's really the easiest way to do it. So in fact, it's good to make sure that it works. In fact, if you're an owner of Discovery 3, a lot of people say, oh, don't use the handbrake. But it's actually probably better to actually use it frequently. Don't use it if you are going off-road, because you might get contamination in the rear brake shoes. And in fact, that's the other thing while I'm round here. The rear brakes, it's important that they are adjusted frequently for the handbrake, because if that gets worn, that will be one of the points will actually cause the failure. There's a little mechanism in here, and if you look up on the internet, if you look at Bod's Bible or Brake Bible, you can see everything about that, how to adjust that as well. I'll just put it on now so you can actually hear what a handbrake should sound like. I'll just put it onto the first position, and here that's it on. That's it off. So there should be no squealing, should be nice and smooth. And really what you're listening out for as well, if you're an owner, just make sure that that length of travel when it's actually coming on and off, it remains consistent. And another nice benefit you might want to look out for is the armrest refrigerator. I find this really helpful, especially if you're out on a long day going down the green lanes and things like that as well. Great to put your sandwiches in there. And when you're in the vehicle, make sure you check over all of the display screen. There shouldn't be any error messages, anything popping up that's going to be a problem for you later on. If you do see any errors, that's when you need someone else to come along, help you, plug in an IDD tool, check to see actually what those errors are, because again, it might be something that's very low cost to fix, it might be something that's really expensive as well. And then, yeah, obviously start up the car. Make sure there's no heavy smoke that's going to be coming out, at least when it's on tick over. This car's been remapped, so it would probably see some smoke if I give it really full throttle, but on normal sort of low revs it should be nice, smooth, clean, no knocking, no odd sounds. When you're out on your test drive, make sure you also put it into the low range. Try each of the different terrain responses and listen out if there's any odd sounds. Sometimes you might hear sort of clonking noises. That can be issues with the diff, especially if you're steering tightly. If the vehicle's been through deep water in the past, it could be that it's had water in those diffs and they might need to be cleaned out. And again, that's not a huge issue as long as it's not degraded any of the metalwork in there too badly. Whoa, and yes, it's obviously on its high setting there, thanks to the X-lifter. The centre prop shaft and also the torque converter, they can wear out. It's not a big issue again on those, they can be replaced. You can feel that when you pull away, especially if you go back and forwards, you can feel if there's any sort of vibration also at speed. So again, just check that when you're out on your test drive. Probably last point is, just make sure obviously the vehicle's in reasonable condition. You can see we've obviously been down the green lanes with this, but if you look after it, put some ceramic coating on it, give it a polish out, it's amazing how you can actually get some of those scratch marks out of it. And again, just make sure that all the doors open correctly, make sure the windows work. Because again, I've seen lots of vehicles which have issues with locking mechanisms, window mechanisms, all the little bits. Yes, you can get those parts pretty cheap, especially because obviously lots of breakers around. Inside the Discovery, you'll be pleasantly surprised how much space you've got. It's a very relaxing position to drive, pretty much straight on. You've got the nice armrests that fold down here as well. Here you can see you have the terrain response. It comes, as I said, on all the models apart from the very sort of basic ones which only have the coil sprung suspension. Centre dashboard, what can I say about it? It's very like a solid brick. It's from the obviously 10-15 years ago, but it still does the job. And in fact, this stereo system that's in here, the Harman Logic 7 system, is actually very good quality for sound as well. What you will also see on the screen here, in fact I think you'll see one of our other videos if you want to watch that, you can see on that screen information about when you're off-road. It will tell you about how the wheels are articulating, and also a really helpful thing is it does show you whereabouts the steering wheel position is, in other words where your wheels are if you're going downhill. Important you've got them straight. Likewise, let's have a look in the back. In the back, got the good old handles on the D3. Actually, they're missing on the D4. But one of the great things as well in here is it actually has 3 individual seats, which means if you have got a family and need to travel around, you can actually quite nicely get even 3 of those baby seats across on this here as well. This particular vehicle is the 7-seater. We'll have a look in the back, but I've got all my other equipment and things there in a minute. If that's important for you, the extra 7 seats, the extra 2 in the back, it does take up most of your space when you're actually got them in the upright position, but they are actually good enough for an adult to sit in them as well. As I said earlier as well, with the HSE model you get the front, you have the front sunroof, the middle sunroof and the rear sunroof. These 2 don't open, but they do come with the blinds if you need to shield out that sun. In this model, the HSE, it had the optional extra, of the rear climate control. Again, quite nice because you can control it either from the front or individually from the back as well. Let's take a look in the back. Again, nice thing about the Discovery 3 and 4, they do have the split tailgate. So if it's raining, you can cover underneath here. And very nicely, you can fold this down. This makes a great table, or you can sit on it as well. As I said, in the back at the minute, I've got it partitioned off because I've actually got my my mud terrain tyre in there, which doesn't fit underneath. I used to have it on the top, but it just makes it a bit more secure in there. And you can see underneath here is obviously where you've got your extra 2 seats to sit in there. Can't show you easily now, but you might want to check in the cubby hole, which is just down the side here on the left. That's where it has storage for the rear tow bar. Sometimes you might find you're lucky you actually get one with the vehicle. If not, they're going to cost you around about £200 to get one of the removable units, and they will just slot straight in down here. It actually has a socket that fits in here. Also, don't forget to watch our video about safety on those, because there have been some instances where the socket can wear and actually can then the whole towing bracket can fall off, which obviously isn't very handy if you're towing something heavy at the time, but you can get some special little plates to bolt on those to secure them as well. driving the Discovery 3, the first thing you notice is it's not as big as it seems. What I mean by that is loads of space inside here, but because we've got windows surrounding us, you can easily see all the four corners of the vehicle, which makes it pretty easy when you're actually manoeuvring it. Next is the suspension. Again, I really recommend you obviously go for the air suspension. Yes, it has lots of problems, but yes, you have lots of extra value you get from it when you're going over these bumpy road conditions like we are now. I remember Jeremy Clarkson saying about the Discovery when it first came out, it simply crushes the speed bumps. I think it's the best way to describe it. It crushes them, but it smooths them out and keeps them completely smooth and clear as well. In here we've got all the creature comforts, as we said before, in terms of the heated seats, the heated windscreen. Even though it's an old vehicle, it still is pretty good in terms of today's standards. So, my top 5 tips for buying. First of all, make sure it has got a good set of service history, and what I mean here is not necessarily stamps in the book, but actually see if you can get some of the receipts to check to see precisely what's been done. Tip number 2, the handbrake. Make sure you've checked and that does work properly, no squealing sounds, etc., or as I said, that's going to be £1,000 for you. Number 3, make sure there's no bings, bongs, and there's no error messages. Perhaps it might even be worthwhile investing in a low-cost scanner, or if one of your friends has got an OBD tool to be able to plug in to check to see if there's any errors in there. Number 4, check all the suspension works, make sure it raises up, lowers down. Also, if possible, make sure there's no play if you can sort of pull the wheels. I know that might be a bit more of a challenge if you've got to jack it up, but again, if you've got to replace those arms on the front and rear, you're here again going to be talking around probably £1,000 by the time you've completed that whole lot. And number 5, the last one, again coming back to the oil pump and the belts, make sure they've been done. If they're done, then hopefully everything should be good. And don't worry about the crank. If it goes, it goes. There's nothing you can do about it. And pricing. All vehicles obviously have been going up recently with the effect of COVID and the supply chain issues. But it's nice to see as well that both the Discovery 3 and the Discovery 4 seem to be going up quite nicely at the moment. There are obviously lots of vehicles out there which are in poor condition, but if you actually are looking for one that's in good condition, been serviced, you're probably looking for in the sort of £6,000 to £7,000 at least, I'd say. And then the next thing, as I said, is to actually check out what's been modified, what original equipment was on there. Again, things like the snorkel, things like the roof rack. This is one of those original Expedition roof racks from Land Rover, just with the top taken off. But again, they're going now for somewhere around about £600. If you want to put yourself a set of rock sliders on, again, they're going to cost you around about £300 to £400. And then the other big sort of point is if you want in a winch. This one's got the £1,200 winch in there as well, with the concealed thing on it. That's also going to set you back around about £400 to £500 for the winch, and then probably another it's another sort of £300 to £400 for all the fixtures and fittings that you're going to need to actually conceal that and put that on. Oh, and I forgot to mention the light just going down here, and important thing is if you get the lower models, they come in with the really candle power dim tungsten halogen bulbs in there. You really want to invest in the HIDs. You see that they're so much brighter. One of the things as well, I'll just put that on for you. One of the things you will find is those xenon lights, they will actually wear out. So after about 5 to 10 years, the output of the bulbs decline. You can get some new ones. I think I paid about £20 for a pair of them off of Amazon, and they put the performance back up again. These ones again in the high models, they've also got the cornering light, so it actually switches on the light, and these also turn as you go around the corner. So hopefully you found that helpful and useful. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we have these very nice stickers, so if you do want to actually join as a member, we'd be happy to send one of these out to you. So as I said, thanks very much everyone. If you've got any questions, also if I've missed anything, please put it in the comments and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Thanks a lot. Bye bye.